tell who are you and a couple of what's.
Okay, I'm Diana Slattery, and the author of this book called Xenolinguistics, Psychedelics, Language, and the Evolution of Consciousness. It's just published, and it's what my research has been about for the last almost going on 15 years. So it's been aimed at studying this phenomena of languages or symbol systems or linguistic systems or whatever you want to call them that people have experienced in psychedelic states, and they're usually quite striking to the individual because they have meaning within the context of their experience, and often that meaning is associated with some kind of communication with the other in psychedelic states, whether that's some form of spirit or ancestor, angel, demon, alien, anyhow, others with a small or a large O, however you want to think about it. But those experiences of encounters can be very numinous and deeply spiritual sometimes for people, or deeply puzzling, or deeply scary. And these languages sometimes appear as forms of navigating that experience, understanding it, not necessarily in a way that you could translate back into English or Russian or whatever natural language you speak, but where the language exists in yourself as a touchstone for understanding that experience.
What moved you to research this subject?
Well, I'd started to write a science fiction novel called The Maze Game. I finally did write it and complete it. But it's, I just started it. I knew it was science fiction. I knew it was based on a game that was the central factor economically, entertainment-wise, everything in this made-up culture, in this future world. And so I'd just gotten to the point where I really needed to know about the game itself. So I asked the characters in the story how the game was played. And the answer came like just bang, you know, it's like the game is played on mazes made of a visual language called glide. And that was the answer. But then it was like I had a big funnel on the top of my head, and it was like, whoo, you know, all this, the whole information about glide came all at once. And it was just like a big download, a big core dump into my head. And there, the glyphs were there, the, the picture.
What
the glyphs look kind of like this.
What is glyphs?
Yeah, a glyph would be an individual symbol.
Individual of language,
yes.
Or your personal
language?
Language.
Of this language. So those would be examples of glyphs.
Like a letter.
Yeah, kind of. So that's the whole set of glyphs. And this is actually with English. It's very hard to see in the thing, but it's English and Chinese. It's been translated into. So anyhow, all of those glyphs appeared just like bang, and I just wrote them down. You know, I could see the whole thing. I could see how they work together. They fit together. They sort of interlock in these mazes. And then I also saw how they weren't just static glyphs, the way all of our writing systems are, but they actually could move and morph. And so I took them into software and just started animating them, because they're very, very easy to animate. And once you animate them, you realize that any glyph can transform into any other glyph. And then if you have a whole set of glyphs in a maze, and they start to transform, they like send lines of energy through the maze form and stuff like that. So I started playing with what is, how does a symbol system that can do these different kinds of things than static writing systems that, basically go in lines from left to right or right to left or up and down. And that's all of our writing systems are in lines. And these were in like hypertextual mazes. So I just started wondering about how meaning is made when the signs can change. And what does that mean? What does it mean? Does that give you a transformational logic about things? Does it allow you to think in terms of change, evolution, in the very forms of the language? And then that led me looking at the structure of English, and natural languages in a different kind of way, where it's very much, all these languages are structured on a duality and a two-valued logic and a basic subject-object dichotomy. You have subject does something to object, and that's the sentence structure in most languages. And this seemed to be, invite a different kind of way to make meaning. But what that was, I started to work on figuring out. And that's what took me back into the psychedelic world.
And did you understand the meaning? Where you find the meaning of these glyphs?
That was a long process because I found, yes, I could translate them into English. And I did a whole exercise in that of translating the glyphs, then putting them together in pairs of 2 and 3, and then translating those. And I wrote an oracle, which is an iPad app right now, and it's actually just getting ported to the iPhone. I'm going to try to get it done by the end of February, but it's coming. And but that whole exercise and all that translation, it was very, very interesting. It was a dip into poetry again. It was, and it's useful, but the message basically was, as I was going back into the psychedelic sphere and asking about this, it was like, well, maybe now you can let go of the English language and you can abandon the alphabet just for a little while and examine this language on its own terms. And so I had to really go into some deep psychedelic spaces to do that. And in those spaces it has just a whole, it has a whole different way of making meaning, and it's very much making meaning in the moment, where even the glyphs, because they move, morph, and change, and they can change all their visual qualities, they can change their shape from one glyph into another, that meaning became very, very much very subtle and very much of the moment, and of what was staying the same, and what, against that background of stability, other things were changing and moving. And the whole thing becomes like a wave-like vibratory environment where things are flowing, where they're changing. And meaning becomes that, a flow of meaning through time that's only specific to that moment and to whoever's having that communication. So that doesn't really say what happens, but it's, what I'm trying to do is exaggerate some of the differences between the words. When we use words this way, we put them in a book. That's three-dimensional glide forms in that. So,
but what for?